Welcome to On the Brink with Andi Simon. Thank you for joining this podcast today. I so love to bring you interesting people to help you do what an anthropologist might do, see, feel, and think in new ways so that you can change. Our job is to get you off the brink. And what I want you to do is understand the stories others can tell you that can share with you new insights and ideas, and in the process help you say, I can do that. Or, ooh, I don't have to accept that the way it's always been. So I have two extraordinary women with me today, Dr. Stacy Feiner and Rachel Wallis Andreasson. Now, Rachel came to me through Washington University, which is near and dear to our hearts, and through Rachel came Stacy. They are going to bring you some insights from their new book, The Sixth Level. But first, let me introduce them and tell you why you should listen and listen carefully, and then we'll get into the detail of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start with Dr. Stacy Fine. She's a psychologist and a high-performance coach who supports leaders, especially in mid-market and family-owned businesses. And I grew up in a family-owned business. I understand the complexities of it. And her job is to resolve emotionally charged dynamics and drive sustainable value. With roots in clinical therapy at University of New Hampshire in Vassar and corporate experience at Merrill Lynch, KeyBank, and BDO, she now leads her own firm founded in 2018. She's an entrepreneur, an investor, why not, and an author of Talent Mindset, and she's co-author of The Sixth Level. She's also a recipient of the Hobart and William Smith Peace Prize. She combines a wonderful pro-growth, pro-health mindset. We're going to talk about mental fitness today. We're going to talk about invisible forces. You're going to hear about ways that you can get out of your own handicap and get forward because you're full of brilliance. Women, listen carefully. Rachel came to me through our connections at WashU, and I'm delighted to have met her and to now share her story with you all. She brings leadership experience grounded in her family-run business. Now, I always tell you, I grew up in a family firm. It's very, very interesting. But she became the leader of it. She's an acquisition architect, a CEO overseeing 1,100 team members, and she was the first woman president of the Missouri State Association for the convenience store industry, her family firm. And she earned the peer-nominated leadership award. She's also served as executive director of Congregation Temple Israel, and she leads on several boards, including a bank. She's co-author of this great book, Sixth Level. But I think what's so interesting about this book is that you take a woman who has been in a family firm, a little bit of my background, and a woman who's been an academic, but also applying it into business. You merge them together with some others, and you have this amazing aha moment where all of a sudden something comes out of it that's bigger than either of them alone, and they are so excited to share it with you. I'm going to let them talk a little bit about how it all came about. And so may I start with Dr. Steiner, pardon me, Dr. Feiner and Stacy. Forgive me, but Stacy, talk about a little bit about how you and Rachel came along this journey, because it will help us set the stage.
Lovely. Thanks for having us, Andi. It's really wonderful to be on the podcast, and we do love this topic. It's probably become my favorite topic in the whole wide world is the sixth level, capitalize on the power of women's psychology for sustainable leadership. The book came out in 2023. 2024, we were getting on the map, and 2025, we are working on getting the model adopted in companies and family enterprises, in institutions like higher education. And we're well on our way. So Rachel and I think we met in 2013. We met in a professional context. I was working with her, she and her family business, as Rachel was preparing to be the CEO of her family's business. And we had a really very eye-opening and successful endeavor together. And Rachel is a phenomenal leader. And so by the time we were working through all of that, we had lots of things in common. Rachel comes to these conversations and these concepts from an operating business, from a family business, from a multi-generational legacy. And I also come to that. My mother introduced me to the theory that is premising the book called self in relation theory. It was it was researched and it was designed in 1971, spearheaded by Dr. Jean Baker Miller, and it was presented at the Stone Center at Wellesley College in Boston. And in high school, my mother took me to the Wellesley College Stone Center, and I participated in the development, in the working papers of the theory, and it just stayed with me for the duration. And then we finally wrote a book together with Dr. Kathy Overbeck and Dr. Jack Harris. Together, we wrote the book.
I'm not going to say you were 10 when you went to do that, but it was a complete and very impactful moment for you. It's interesting. I truly believe in chance and serendipity, but this sounds like your mother had a great influence on bringing you, I don't know, to see things through a fresh lens at an early,
Absolutely.
and that formed the foundation for what you're doing. Let me stay with you just for a moment, then I'll come to Rachel. You bring a psychologist lens to this. Is that a particular lens to the emotional patterns showing up in women as they're navigating all these complex places here that we're working with? Just give us a little bit about the perspective that you bring, and then I'll switch to Rachel. Please.
Well, so thank you, Andy. That's such a beautiful that you captured those words that I mentioned and are giving me a chance to explore that with everybody. But uh, so what I learned at the Stone Center with my mom sitting next to me once a month on Wednesdays when they presented their research, I learned things at that time. One, I learned is that women are not the opposite of men, that we are complementary.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry
I,
about that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please continue.
I learned that women have a different psychology than men. And I learned that women by themselves are full human beings. And those things were very empowering to me. When I got to college, I met Dr. Jack Harris. He was my sociology professor. He is also a co-author of the book. And he provided us with a lens to the sociology of humanity and people. And that also influenced me dramatically in the course of the rest of the course of my life. With regard to women and women's psychology and emotion, yes, absolutely. There's a unique and a fascinating opportunity to embark in this, on this topic. Is that it wasn't until 1971 that women's unique psychology was studied from the lens of women. Prior to 1971, all psychological research was done by male researchers on male subjects. And those findings were then erroneously generalized to women. And subsequently, from that time, women have been a deviation to the norm. And not only are we deviations to the norm, we are therefore not taken seriously, we are not learned from, we're not listened to, and we're not represented in the research. But that is actually true of all traditional disciplines. Women's perspective, women's lens, and women's experiences has been left out of the reality that we're all living in. And those are the invisible norms that are really, really hard to challenge. And I'll just add one more piece is the book intends to ask the reader to step outside of the current norms and the reality that we're living in and look inward and decide what we like and what we don't like and reshape our reality towards the ethic of care rather towards the tendency for dominance. And without the ethic of care, we don't have a system of justness. When we don't have a system of justness, we end up having decisions and relationships built on dominance, which are exploitive by their very nature.
You know, we are primates. And as you're talking, I keep thinking of us as hairless primates, but you know, this dominance, the control. You know, I have a leadership academy I've been doing for 7 years with a client, and as I work with the men and women, they lead differently, and leaders need followers. And the followers are also different. And if you don't understand the complexity of the guys and the gals and how to appeal to them in different ways and emotionally relate to them in different ways, you really can't, they won't follow you. And this is all in the conversations that we have, the words we choose create the worlds we live in. And this becomes important to understand, which leads me to Rachel, because you grew up in a family firm. I must say, nobody was happy when I abdicated my responsibilities and I said, no, 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 I'm going to get a PhD in anthropology. And my grandmother rolled her eyes and said, you're going to do what? And I can't tell you what my father and mother did. But I grew up thinking that that was what my track was. And I didn't take it, but you did. And you turned it into something really quite glamorous and illustrious for yourself. How did that shape your view of leadership? And how did it shape your view of how to manage others? You had 1,100 folks. How do you build a community that people care about each other? What kind of wisdom can you share with our audience so they can learn from you? Is that a good question to start?
Beautiful question. And it gives me a chance to also honor my dad's legacy because he was the founder of our company because his dad died early in his life and he started working he started working prior to a gas station, but when he was 16, he started working in a gas station. And then after he got out of the service, he ended up buying one gas station on Route 66 in Cuba, Missouri that was doing about $100,000 a year. And today our company will do almost $2 billion a year. And now we have even more employees. But I think what my dad instilled in me were three things. A strong work ethic. He worked hard every day, but he also, at his funeral, people said, your dad worked so hard, but you also felt like he was your best friend because he just knew how to connect with people. So it was a strong work ethic. It was a connection to people. He valued people. He valued the work they did for our company. He was grateful for their effort that they put forth. And yeah, he just, genuinely wanted them to feel like they were owners in our company. So he set up open financials and open book, and employees today will still comment that your dad would come into the convenience store and ask me my opinion on the remodel. And I thought he was just being nice, but then, the plans come out and my ideas and the plans. So those three things were instilled. And I guess what I've taken away from it, I feel like my whole life, I have just tried to lead by example, lead in those ways that he set those foundational values. And what I would love to see in the future is just a whole army of people leading by example, because, there's a million leadership books out there and a lot of them are theoretical. A lot of them don't even, are based in theory and don't really even tell you how to do it. And I think, we are faced with two major problems today. One is that good performers typically get promoted. Even we have sales associates. So if you can give great customer service, you're smiling, you're showing up on time, and you're doing quality work, we're going to ask if you want to move up in the company. And it is our responsibility to not only teach you the technical things like the additional responsibilities of paperwork or inventory, but the most critical element is how do you lead a team of people? Because just because I am a strong person and have a strong work ethic, it doesn't mean I can lead others. And today, people are faced with so much more complex challenges today because of COVID, because of hybrid locations and hybrid positions, because of mental illness, because of AI and technology. There are so many more complex problems. And really, Stacy helped me at a time in my life where we say I was not on the brink, I was on the ledge. And Stacy helped me work out of that. And I do feel like the sixth level is a culmination of more than 22 people's work in the sixth level that not only tells you how to lead in a way with the ethic of care, but it gives you examples of how it has been done.
Well, you or Stacy, are there some? I want to get into it. You said two things. You don't want to be academic and simply preach. There's something here that's very actionable. But usually people understand a story better than the abstract. Which of you two would like to give us some illustrative cases that you've worked on where people were able to change, even yourself, change the way something was going by changing the way they were leading others to get there. I mean, I have some ideas too, but I'd rather listen to your thoughts about, illustrative companies that were my book On the Brink is about stuck or stalled companies who couldn't see their way out of it. Give me a, Stacy, would you like to? And then I'll come back to Rachel. How's that?
Sure. Sure. Um, so I'll say that the sixth level, the book, it's also a collaborative. So we also do consulting and coaching and training and such. But the book specifically is really a layered book. So Rachel was mentioning there are 16 case studies, 16 narratives from 16 individual women who are executives, they're entrepreneurs, they're owners of their companies, and they talk through their experience being six-level leaders. And these were blind kind of studies. They shared their stories and ultimately they proved the theory. And the theory also proved and gave a name to this leadership style. One of the stories is Elaine Russell Rialfi. She is an executive director of a non-for-profit in Akron, Ohio. And she talks about accountability. And she has this really very unusual and ingenious way of talking about accountability. She says accountability doesn't start at the end. It's not a thing you do at the end of an event or a project or an initiative. Or at the end of the year when you're doing performance reviews. Accountability starts at the very beginning of an initiative. Accountability sets the expectations, but also raises the requirements and the promise to each other to accomplish the goal collectively for success at the end. And I think that, if I were just to stop there, I think there are four core differentiators that make up the sixth level that originate in women's psychology. There is mutuality, ingenuity, justness, and intrinsic motivation.
No,
And I would say I don't
no,
remember what
say them again.
mutuality,
Ingenuity.
ingenuity, justness, and intrinsic motivation.
Good. That's terrific. Go ahead, finish your thought, and then we'll get into them a little more deeply.
What they all have in common, other than they are born from women's psychology, is they represent the ethic of care and emotional reciprocity. I share Elaine's story. I don't know what chapter she's in. We have four different sets of chapters that represent those four core differentiators. But I do believe that her perspective on accountability is represented by ingenuity. And ingenuity is the ability to solve complex problems with novel solutions to serve the interests of many. So that's an example of sixth-level leadership.
Good. We'll come back to that in a moment. I have some thoughts to share. But Rachel, an illustration, even your own or other cases you have 16 of them.
Yes. I do have a chapter in the book that's about the family business, but I'd prefer to share Lisa's story because Lisa's still president of her hospital that's in rural Missouri. And when she had worked for this hospital for a long time, but when she became president, it was on the heels of COVID. And there was so much isolation felt by the staff, not only because they had to wear the PPP equipment, but also just because, they weren't operating in teams anymore. They were isolated. They were 6 feet apart. They were separated and they were exhausted. I mean, they were covering shifts for so many other people. They were seeing members of their community die. I mean, they were just very disheartened. So she walked into this situation, became the leader, saw these problems, and I'll just restate the four core differentiators that Stacy did because Lisa started with intrinsic motivation. She really wanted to see this hospital thrive. She knew the team was talented, they cared, and they just needed a person with passion that was willing to go above and beyond and lead by example. And so that we called intrinsic motivation. Then Lisa saw the first thing she did was listening sessions with every employee. So she talked to them. Sometimes it was on the floor. When she talked to the hospital workers on the floor, whether they were doctors or nurses or administrative staff. She pushed around a snack cart so she could nourish them while she gathered information. And what she learned from these listening sessions is that, yeah, the team didn't feel aligned anymore. And so she created a rally cry called One Heart, One Team. And it was more than a poster on the wall. Like, she talked about one heart, one team. When somebody didn't share information with another team member, she redirected them and brought them back and asked the question, is this one heart, one team? And this teamwork and this alignment is what we call mutuality, because it is two-way empathy. It is aligning behind a common purpose. So then Lisa then went on the track of figuring out, like, how to grow the hospital. What new revenue sources could there be? How could we operate more efficiently? She was able, because of the teamwork, to get more capital dollars. And when she continued to go back to that one heart, one team, the whole team started giving their ideas. So, like, for instance, Lisa decided to shadow every single department within the hospital. Once she did that for a year, her staff that was reporting to her, they started shadowing their team members. So it was this flywheel cycle. And then other people started coming up with ideas. How can we improve this? How can we make this better? And then finally, justness, just making sure there is inclusivity, there's inclusion, there's equity, there's transparency, and then there's the accountability that Stacy talked with, that Elaine really focused on. So when you have this trust that you're building up, that's what we call justness. And really, truly, when you put in those 4 core differentiators, it does act like a flywheel. It builds this culture of wanting to contribute more, this regenerative culture where people are engaged. And it kind of goes back to what my dad tried to create, where people feel like owners. They feel that they have a voice and they are heard. And so they're connected to the organization. They're engaged. And I'm just going to end with today. This hospital has broken historical records, financial records, the highest patient satisfaction scores ever in the hospital's history. They have received more funding dollars. And today, when I talk to people in the community, they say this hospital is nothing like it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that you walk in and you feel the caring culture. You feel the one heart, one team, that it is a true transformation. And that's what we try to instill when we talk about the 6th level. I mean, you can talk about a lot of things, but when you see and feel and the transformation is tangible, there is nothing else like it. And not everybody has experienced transformational leadership, and that's what we're trying to explain, what it looks like, what it feels like, and teach it so more people can experience it.
I'm curious, do people like Lisa or this woman get trained to do this, or do they just have that caring, emotional approach where they don't start by telling you, I know you don't? I mean, that we understand that all of the day we have is conversation. And intelligent conversations talk about what we can do, not what I know and you should do. I mean, we really understand intuitively how to build collaborative, collective communication and creative problem solving. I have a couple of hospitals I'm thinking of who could really use a rethinking of how they go about trying to, because the leadership can't do anything really. I mean, it's always everyone else. And the only way you can get them engaged is to change the conversation. So how did these women learn to do this? Oh, and accountability, by the way, you said something important. It's not for something, it's with somebody else. You're accountable to somebody else. And that's intuitively not necessarily part of what you're thinking. I'm accountable for something. No, you're accountable to someone. And it's a relationship. And so how do they learn this? I mean, and you're going to try and teach it. So there's 2 parts to my question. How do they learn it, and what are you trying to teach, and how do you do it? Who wants to jump in?
Stacy's ready to jump in, and then I'll pick up.
Again, these concepts, they all come together. It's, a full book and it's lots of conversation. So these are just kind of the key points. I remember when Rachel and I were doing a presentation in New York City with 8 public company women executives. And we were talking about the 6th level. They were truly engaged. It was a round table. And as we were talking, one woman at the end of the table said, gosh, I love the 6th level. I love what we're talking about. It gives me a name for my leadership style. I didn't know it had a name, but it's giving me a name. And now I can go to my leadership team and I can tell them what I'm doing, and I can now get credit. Now I can tell them how I'm leading. I can explain what I'm doing and why it's valuable, and I can get credit, and maybe I can get compensated for that. And another woman at the other end of the table said, very similar, I love the 6th level. It's giving a name to my leadership. I wasn't able to explain it before. Now I can tell my team why they love me, because my team loves me, and I can tell them that it's because I operate from the 6th level. So I think one of the most valuable things, where does it come from, is some of us have a higher propensity for leading this way than others. We haven't forsaken our natural tendencies or our natural capacity for emotional reciprocity, for mutuality, for self in relation. We haven't jeopardized it. We have, however, operated under the radar screen. And so I think, and everybody, that's another thing our team would really want me to say, is everybody can learn it. This is a human capacity conversation. We all have it in us to be relational. And actually, it's natural. It comes natural. If you study anything by Niobe Way from NYU, she studies that these are human qualities that have been repressed and disqualified and dismissed. And I just will add that that we can all learn it. It's a process of toggling. That there are 2 parts of our brain, and one is more analytic, the other is more emotive and emotional, and one can only act alone, so they can't act together. One suppresses the other. Women have been very well practiced as being both emotive and analytical. And so we toggle very quickly. And so we can more often than our male counterparts engage in mutually responsive ways. It doesn't mean men don't do that, and many men do that, because it is a natural human capacity, but it needs to be practiced. It's a muscle. And women are more practiced at toggling between the analytical and the emotional, so that we can bring more 6th level leadership, emotional reciprocity, the ethic of care to the relationships that we're building and realizing at work and in our families and in our communities.
That's a great answer. Rachel, your thoughts? How do these women the COVID created opportunities for unusual successes that came often from people that even their managers didn't think they could rise to the occasion. This woman transformed a hospital. Tell us about it. How did she do it?
Yes. I do think that I want to go back to how did this happen? Because it is Lisa's story, it's Megan's story. There are 16 stories of these women, and most had to operate during COVID, during change that had never been experienced before. So women do have a natural propensity for this ingenuity to figure out how to manage these complex problems that really benefit a larger group. But it's the 6th level, like Stacy said at the beginning, it is born out of women's psychology. But I want to be clear that is not a book for women. Women are demonstrating this 6th level leadership because they have a natural propensity for it, that we could, talk about all the examples of how we're socialized differently as men and women and why women are more naturally leading in this way. I do remember even growing up in my own family business in a very male-dominated industry, and I first worked in operations before I joined the family business at Taco Bell, running, managing operations, and then then got a different job in Florida in the HR department as a training coordinator. And that's when I kind of fell in love with HR, and then brought that to my company as our family business. But I think, yeah, a lot of times I got comments that, oh, Rachel, you're too into the people, or you're too soft, or I've heard comments like, leave your personal problems at the door. Like, people should just be focused on work. And that's the myth that we're trying to dispel. You cannot disconnect from another human being and lead in an effective way. So I just want to make clear points that the sixth level is born out of women's psychology and is very successful and effective at creating engaged teams. Yes, it's a book for men and women, for all leaders, because everyone can learn the tactics on how to be an effective leader that connects individuals and gets them going in the same direction for a purpose. And yeah, I like to give the example of just the rowboat, because I think all of the women's stories, even though they're different industries and different size companies, I always picture like a row team, and everybody has an oar and they're all trying to row in one direction. But if you haven't been taught the basic essence of it, somebody could be turning their paddle backwards, or somebody could be dragging their paddle in the water, and you're not going fast, or maybe you're even going in a circle. But it does take that person at the front of the boat to get the whole team in sync. And when you are in sync and you all paddles are hitting that water and at the same velocity and pushing through it, and you are flying forward to your destination, it feels so incredible. And I think these stories in the sixth level exhibit how to get your team rowing in the same direction. And yeah, and it's for everyone.
Well, if you were thinking about the audience, men and women, what advice would you give them for trying to find their voice and their power in the world that we're in today? Some thoughts on advising. Stacy, you want to wait a second and think, and I'll let Rachel take it on. Come on, give me some advice.
Rachel's ready.
Yeah, the advice I would give is that there are key principles on how to be a effective leader. And so I think if you go back to the four core differentiators, these are principles. They're umbrella principles. So it's not a prescriptive framework. It's not, we give you a recipe and you put in a cup of sugar, a cup of flour, and a baking soda, and you have a great cake. It is that these are umbrella principles, and there are a lot of tactics to build, for example, mutuality in your organization, or to build justness, or how to lead by example with this intrinsic motivation, or to get the team, motivated around ingenuity, how to set up all the conditions for this type of culture to thrive. They are principles and there are tactics, and the tactics have to be relative to your organization. Every culture is different, and we're trying to build an engaged culture, but the way that you go about it is very specific to the people, your industry, who your competitors are. So there are multiple tactics. And so I would say, I would just encourage people that if they're interested, to reach out to us. Of course, you can read the book and read the stories and see the questions and answers in the back. But at the end of the day, it takes boots on the ground. It takes a different way of thinking. And for that, you need help. You need help in learning this new way. And we are here to do that for you if you are interested.
And Stacy, some thoughts?
Yes.
Advice?
Andi, you're so good at facilitating. Thank you for remembering. I do have a couple things I'll add on to the question. It's so interesting when I've heard women, in coaching sessions, and they talk about, well, I just did that recruiting work because nobody else was doing it. Or I filled that gap at the company because nobody else was doing it. That project was flailing, and I knew the leader didn't know how to do it very well, and that they were trying. And so I just stepped in and I helped them. And I think there are a lot of times when leaders are doing that, just stepping in to help, that is really sixth-level leadership. I mean, first of all, it represents intrinsic motivation, that you're intrinsically motivated to do something, whether you're paid or not. It's needed to be done. But I think historically, women have filled these roles because no one else is doing it, when in fact, it is the highest value work that needs to be done. And so I think when you ask the question, what do we need? I think the first thing that we need to recognize is that there is a leadership style that we're practicing, and it is called something. Because I think that it grounds us. We're not just doing it intuitively because nobody else is doing it. We're doing it from a very powerful place of emotional connection and intrinsic motivation. We want this thing to be successful, and we are willing to give our time to it. But in the absence of recognition and incentive or reward, we find ourselves, again, I'm repeating myself, doing it because nobody else is. And I think that's very flawed thinking. And I think it's because we don't have a model to rely on. So I think first is know that you're doing the highest value work when you're just doing it. Number two, become familiar with the model so that you can claim that you have a leadership model and it has value, and learn what that value is so you can speak to it. And I think also I think part and parcel with that is we are on the shoulders of other leadership models, and emotional intelligence is one, and it is very familiar to people. We are on the shoulders of emotional intelligence. What emotional intelligence is oriented towards is one's own self-awareness. But where the sixth level takes it to the next level is the recognition that relational health has to happen, not just personal responsibility and personal self-awareness, but relational awareness. And so I think that's the other piece that really comes to bear, is the recognition that we are more successful when we engage together, and there is value in that. And so I would just encourage people to continue to recognize that there is a leadership style, they can own it, and they can get more credit for it, and then they can teach others to do it, and that's how better leadership happens. Oh, and the point that I was trying to make is there is a sociology to this, right? When we perform these four core differentiators, we create healthy social dynamics. And while emotional intelligence is teaching individual responsibility, the sixth level is teaching the social responsibility to that. And we don't have a model for that until now.
Well, it's so interesting because you've given people something so they don't think it's idiosyncratic. I made it up. As opposed to I'm doing something that's more really a style that others do as well, but I would never know about it because I don't watch them. Nobody's, coached me or mentored me. And I bet even in mentoring, people aren't articulating those four pillars of how to do it or do it better or differently. They're being tactical and practical. And so there's a whole world out there ready for the wisdom that comes from the sixth level. And Maslow has made a whole model of this all, and it's well beyond self-actualization. This is about communities and building with purpose and seeing yourself as purposeful. And it's so interesting. I have two short questions, though, because we'd have to wrap up closely. But what do we do for girls? So girls grow up knowing that they have a unusual and wonderful leadership style that they can build upon and not feel they have to be a tomboy or compete with the guys or be tough and so forth. Stacy, your thought?
Well, I think that reminds me that we are in a crisis of men. Young men are in crisis today. Here's the broader way of answering the question. And I don't mean to deflect from it. I just think there's various ways of coming at it is we live in a system that creates false dichotomies. As I mentioned earlier, women and men are taught to not get along, to not like each other, to see each other as different and opposite when in fact we're complementary. So I think boys and girls, men and women are set up to battle and to be in isolation from each other. When I think, in fact, what we really need to recognize is that as human beings, we are invited to the whole continuum of emotional awareness and emotional experience and human experience. So I guess I would say, what do we do with girls? This probably the same thing we do with boys. Right? We teach them how to toggle between their analytical thinking and their emotive thinking, and we encourage them to build this muscle so that they can be more well-rounded human beings. And rather than dominate, manipulate, control, we have the quality of communication, as you say, Andi, and reciprocity and the interests of all. And again, it's not to compromise individuality. Actually, when you have safe environments to express oneself, you have more opportunity for individuality because the me and the we can coexist and not compete. So I guess I really want to bring the conversation of boys and girls together, that we are human and we all need to learn the same things.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm watching Rachel's face. A thought, my dear.
Yeah, I had two thoughts on that. I think change is happening and we are all evolving. And Jack Harris tells us, the three P's for men in the past have been procreate, provide, and protect. And today we're moving those three P's to partnerships and being a parent and being involved. So I feel like change is happening. And it is, like Stacey said, we are a human species and we need to find the ways to complement each other, to bring it together, which to me, a lot of times when I was teaching classes in our family business, I would quote Peter Drucker and say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's true. Culture is the secret weapon. And the sixth level is a book on leadership that's born out of women's psychology, but that men and women can use together to validate the natural way of connecting with other human beings. It should not be a dominant, let me tell you what to do, just follow my orders. I don't need to hear your opinion. There are many examples of this failed way that is detrimental not only to individuals, but also to companies. And so, yeah, culture is a secret weapon. The sixth level tells us how to bring an engaged culture together. And that is my wish for us to be able to not only empower the people that we lead, but the teams that we have, the organizations, and even the communities that we live in and our own families. I mean, we can create a culture of success, a culture of inclusion. And that's what the dream of the sixth level is.
I tell you, it's going to be interesting as an anthropologist watching this operate. I was reading recently an article about how the Gen Zs are not doing happy hour. They're not staying around after work. Women always have had a hard time staying around after work. And it's after work where you hang out over a beer that you begin to build those relationships. And now we need new cultures with new structures that encourage people to have relationships. And they're not just transactional, tactical, and practical. Because what you're talking about is that what I'm doing is because I care about you and I care about the organization. And it's not about me, it's about we. And that changes the whole oxytocin in your brain and makes the bonding come alive in a very powerful way. But I do remember Gregory Bateson's work in, I think in the highlands of New Guinea, I think that's where he did it, where he realized that boys and girls only knew what they were in opposition to what they weren't. And it's humans are complicated critters. And so this is a real interesting sixth level, saying that you are different. It's okay. And you're different, just watch how they do. But they're learning how to be more collaborative and communicative and caring. And if the boss isn't, things don't do so well. And when they are, they do much better for a guy and a gal. And the gals can show you how because they roll up the sleeves and get it done. And they don't ask permission and they don't say, I'm sorry, and they just make it happen. Let me wrap. This has been an absolutely scrumptious conversation with two beautiful women. Dr. Stacy Feiner and Rachel Wallis Andreasson, and they brought to us their new, well, it's their long-standing work that's come together in a book, maybe sort of a new book, but in fact, it's a very important opportunity for us to think about how to lead, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're young or old, because society and communities and businesses need leaders. Now, maybe we can have a cappella groups that can sing without a conductor, and sometimes that happens. And in the absence of a leader, people will figure out who to fill the vacuum with. Often not the best leader, who's ever the strong person who comes in. So if you don't have a leader, you got to find one soon. And the women are doing things differently without having understood that that is not unique to them. It's not idiosyncratic, but there's a way that women do lead. It's a sixth level. And it's beyond self-actualization. It's a way of really making communities and people come together. My remarks to finish. This is a powerful, thought-provoking conversation today. I made some remarks up before we came together because I wanted to make sure I highlighted a couple of things. You have invited us to reimagine leadership, not as a position of power, but as a practice of purpose, connection, and deep relational intelligence. Is that what you're doing? This is
You nailed it. You nailed it.
Amen, sister.
Well, I anticipated, but I also sometimes like to think ahead so that I don't have to ad hoc it. It's okay. But it's also important that we make the point that this is a practice of purpose, connection, and deep relational, I can't say the word, it's not relationships, but it's very much relational intelligence. And this is real important for all of our listeners, men and women. This is not a leadership model, it's a call to action. You know, this is a time for us to really challenge long-held beliefs about how to lead. I'm thinking of my own leadership academies and how important it's going to be for them to think about, they do and watch them without having a word to address it. And the guys and the gals collaborate on their biggest project in a way that's hard to imagine from before. Nobody takes charge. Everyone gets together and they do really well. So this is women who are ready to lead on their own terms, to know that they're not alone and they're not really trying to figure it out. Just do it. You know how to do it, and you can run a team really well, and you can really build that kind of relationship that's going to thrive, regardless of what kind of business, a healthcare business, a manufacturing. I interviewed someone who is in the automobile industry. Oh, it's tough. And I've written a bunch of articles on being a woman in men-dominated industries, aren't they all? But actually, I should just rewrite them and say being a woman. It's not about being in those industries. It's how do you begin to navigate the complexity. So I want to thank you for your courage, for your clarity, and for lighting the way for so many others. And I speak from my heart to your hearts. This is really a special time for women, challenging time for women. And I think that we're going to rise above the challenges and bring together a better society and culture for all of us, men, women, young and old, because its times are right, right for all of us. I'm going to ask you for your last words, and then I'm going to wrap us up for the last time for my listeners. Stacy, I started off with you. You can wrap. What do you want to end with?
Well, both Rachel and I are mothers to daughters and sons, and I will say, I think I can speak for Rachel also, that we have raised six-level sons, and they also benefit. Men also benefit when they are in environments that are sixth level. It's challenging. The command and control environment is challenging for everyone. It hasn't served any of us. Of course it wouldn't. It's only about half of us. So when we bring in the full picture, we all have the capability and the capacity to be full human beings for ourselves, for the people in our community, and for the things that are most important for the sustainability of the planet.
Yes, it is. It's a time. Rachel, a last thought?
Yeah, I guess I have always believed that the right people come into your life at the right time for a specific purpose. And Andi, I am just honored to have met you. I have enjoyed finding you, reading your books, rethink. I mean, the myths of women leadership, and your podcast where you have so many intellectual people coming on, challenging the status quo. And I hope that we have fulfilled that mission for you today as well, because this conversation has been so interesting. And I know we could have gone through a lot of rabbit holes if we only had, 10 more hours to spend talking to you, but it's exactly, what my attraction to Stacy was when I interviewed, multiple executive coaches, because Stacy had the business experience and the psychology experience, and those things matter because this is more than, behaviors. It's how we think, it's how we've been socialized. And so I hope that everybody feels empowered by the sixth level. And my wish for everyone is to be able to operate at the sixth level.
Thank you. Thank you for your kindness. It is interesting. When I wrote my first book, On the Brink, my PR person said, you have to do a podcast. And she put me on a couple, and I went, oh, those aren't very good at all. And I said, well, if I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to have fun. I'm not going to monetize it, but I am going to share smart people who can help others. I'm a sharer. And so you guys have been absolutely fabulous sharing your wisdom today. And I love the way you came upon it because it's grounded in the sciences, the social sciences and the psychology and the life experiences. And so for all of you who are watching, remember you too can smash the myths that are holding you back. Don't let them stifle what you can do. It's a mythology. And remember, we live the story in our mind. And if you want to change, just change the story. It's not that hard. You control your story. Nobody else is controlling it. So it's time for you to rise above what everyone said and lead with heart, purpose, and the kind of charity that can make others want to follow you, because a leader without followers isn't much good at all. And so today I'm going to say goodbye. My books are all on Amazon. Just look up Andi Simon on Amazon. It's Andi. My husband is Andy, and he would love you to find his books, but they're not there. And I think this is more fun than fun. Thank you, ladies. All of you who come.
Awesome.
Awesome. Send us lots of good stuff. We always love to hear from you about what you'd like to hear more about. And I'm just happy to bring great guests here. So on that note, I'm going to remind you to take your observations, turn them into innovations, and get off the brink. It's time. Go change and soar again. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye now.